Imagine walking into a classroom full of strangers, hearing their names exactly once, and then being told to write down all 24 of them perfectly from memory. That's the very first test these students face. Welcome back. This is chapter 2 of High School Syndrome, and if you thought chapter 1 was just the setup, buckle in because this is where the mind games truly begin. Alright, let's set the scene. The classroom is dead silent. All 25 students in year 1B have just finished the surprise exercise. Most of the students look rattled, a few though seem completely unbothered. John is one of them. He quietly murmurs as expected, and the narration pulls us into his head. Apparently, the moment John sat down at his desk, he had already anticipated something like this. Years of honing his observation skills meant he noticed things others missed, like the hidden button on his desk that revealed a concealed tablet. He didn't know the exercise would specifically involve remembering names, but once their homeroom teacher gave the class a 10-minute window to introduce themselves, the pieces clicked into place. John predicted they'd be tested on the names, and that's exactly what happened. He scans the room. Most students look worried, clearly having struggled with the exercise. But John's eyes lands on Charlotte, seated at the far left. She doesn't look too bothered either. He wonders whether she anticipated the test or simply paid close attention during introductions. Based on what he observed of her earlier behavior, he figures it was probably the latter. She was just naturally attentive. He suspects she's on track for a near perfect score. Mr. Archibald then announces he will reveal the overall results. The tablets ping with individual scores and John checks his, a perfect score, just as he expected. He glances at Charlotte and her expressions tells him something interesting. She didn't get a perfect score. A hint of disappointment crosses John's mind. He had been hoping she would. The teacher starts breaking down the class results. Out of 25 students, only 10 managed an average score or higher. Of those 10, only 5 recalled over 20 names correctly. Only 3 got at least 23 right, and just 1 student achieved a perfect score. John maintains his calm smile throughout all of this, acting like none of it concerns him. Mr. Archibald is about to wrap up when Charlotte raises her hand. She tells the class she's absolutely certain she wrote down every single name correctly. Yet she didn't get a perfect score. She asks if there could have been an error in the assessment. Noah, the bespectacled boy sitting beside her, nods in agreement. He seems to be in the same situation, just 1 point shy of perfect. Mr. Archibald shuts down that possibility immediately. Richardson Elite Academy doesn't make mistake on assessments. He confirms that Charlotte typed in 1 incorrect name. She's visibly frustrated. John watches her carefully and arrives at a conclusion she seems reluctant to accept. Someone in the class lied about their name during introductions. Charlotte wrote down the name she was given, which means she was technically accurate in what she had heard, but the name itself was fake. That's why the system marked it wrong. The only way to get a perfect score, as John did, was to somehow know that person's real name despite the lie. After Mr. Archibald leaves the room, the class erupts into complaints and murmurs. Charlotte, though, pulls herself together quickly. She walks to the front of the class and commands everyone's attention. It takes 2 attempts, the second one significantly louder, but she gets the room to quiet down. She proposes that the class should team up and work together going forward. She shares 2 key observations. First, someone gave a false name during introductions. She explains her reasoning that she is confident in her memory, and the fact that she got 1 name wrong despite being certain she remembered everything correctly points to the deliberate deception. Mia Lena, a blonde girl who introduces herself last during the earlier session, tries to dismiss Charlotte's claim, suggesting she simply made a mistake. Her group of friends backs her up with giggles, but Charlotte firebacks with conviction, pointing out that she has no motive to mislead anyone and has been transparent about everything. The class turns on Mia with glares and she backs off. John watches all of this with quiet amusement, noting Charlotte's ability to leverage her social influence to silence opposition. Charlotte then connects her 2 observations. Someone lied about their name and 1 person got a perfect score. She concludes that these must be the same person, someone who deceived everyone else to claim all the points for themselves. Because remember, the top 5 earners get bonuses. She declares there's a traitor in the class and vows to expose them. John closes his eyes and sighs softly. She's wrong. He knows this because he's the one with the perfect score and he didn't fake his name. He simply recognized the fake name for what it was and wrote down the person's real name instead. He outsmarted the culprit rather than being the culprit. The actual name name faker, John reasons, would never draw attention to themselves by scoring perfectly. That would be self-sabotage. He finds Charlotte's analysis frustrating. She's smart, no question, but she makes too many assumptions. Her reasoning has gaps and she jumps to conclusions without enough evidence. Charlotte then tries a different approach. She appeals directly to the name faker, asking them to come forward and tell the truth. Unsurprisingly, nobody speaks up. That's when Ben Elias steps in. Ben is a tall, well-built boy with a German accent. He argues that waiting for a confession is pointless. Someone who lied that boldly isn't going to have a sudden change of heart. Instead, he proposes something practical. Everyone should display their student ID cards. Since the ID should match the real names in the school system, the faker would be immediately exposed. It was a bold plan, and Charlotte agrees, shows her own ID, and everyone else reluctantly follows. Nobody wants to be the one who refuses and looks suspicious. The problem is, it doesn't work. Every single ID card appears genuine, and Charlotte and Ben are now both confused. John, watching from his seat, isn't surprised. He already knew this approach would fail. The student ID cards were distributed a week before classes started along with the uniforms. Forgery isn't exactly difficult for someone who planned this far ahead. The name faker came prepared with a fabricated ID to back up their fake identity. John is quietly impressed by the level of preparation. He considers another possible solution in his head. If Mr. Archibald had revealed the full breakdown of everyone's scores, they could have compared results and identified which name everyone consistently got wrong. That would point directly to the faker, but there are practical problems with this approach too. There's no established trust in the class yet, and students who scored poorly would never agree to reveal their results just to save face. The method is theoretically sound but socially impossible in this current environment. Charlotte, meanwhile, keeps trying between classes. She publicly shares her email address, hoping the faker will reach out to her privately. She's banking on the idea that the person will realize the risk of continuing their deception, but the faker stays silent. When the long break arrives at 12:30 p.m., most students head to cafeteria or outside. John stays in the classroom. He briefly steps out to observe students heading to the cafeteria, then returns to his seat to watch and listen. Groups are forming, conversations are happening, and John absorbs all of it. To avoid looking like a weirdo sitting alone, he pulls out his tablet. He noticed something that nobody else seems to have caught. The tablets can be used outside of class. All you have to do is swipe your student ID to activate it. He muses aloud that if other students had explored their tablet beyond classes, they might have found a solution to the name faker problem. That's when Charlotte approaches him. She notices him using the tablet after class and asks how he's doing it. John, internally nervous because this is the first girl his age to ever speak to him, manages to keep his composure. He explains the ID swipe method and demonstrates it. Internally, he's silently pleading for Charlotte to pick up on the hint he's giving her. You see, if the tablets only activate with real student IDs and the name faker has a forged ID, then testing everyone's ID against the tablets could expose the culprit. Charlotte gets it almost immediately. Her eyes widens as she connects the dots. If a fake ID can't unlock a tablet, they can use this to identify the faker. She excitedly says she will bring it up during the next break, but John hesitates. He gently suggests that maybe she's done enough for one day. Pushing the class too hard might make her seem bossy, especially since she's not even the class representative yet. He admits to himself that he's basically just repeating advice his grandfather gave him, but the point still stands. Charlotte pauses, considers his words, and agrees. She thanks him and something shifts inside John. He received thank yous before, but this one feels different. His cheeks flush, his heart races, and he can't quite identify the feeling. It's unfamiliar, but definitely not unpleasant. Charlotte heads back to her seat and John watches her go. After the break ends and the next class begins, his mind is somewhere else entirely. For the first time, he's not paying attention to the people and activities around him. He closes his eyes and lets his thoughts drift. Charlotte's smiling face keeps appearing in his mind. He catches himself wondering what might have happened if he'd said different things or made different choices during their conversation. He sighs quietly, puts his smile back on, and opens his eyes to a simple realization. He really wants to talk to her again. And the chapter ends with that. Chapter 3 will be out soon, so if you're into psychological series like Classroom of the Elite, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming, because this story escalates fast. And I will see you in the next one.